precious child, what did they do to you? It can't be by accident that it was patch 8.8 that the wargaming developers decided to do the major overhaul on the entire German line. And by and large this was of benefit to pretty much all of the tanks altered, except for the case of the poor old VK30.01H. Not necessarily in terms of effectiveness, but this thing was heavily nerfed in perhaps the most important aspect, and that is the sheer desire to play it. What was the most exciting Tier 6 German medium tank to play by virtue of its sheer speed and brawling capability was altered to become the least exhilarating Tier 5 heavy tank in the game. The VK3001H now occupies the role formerly dominated by the old pre-nerf Panzer IV-H, which in days long gone itself had a beautiful long-range sniping 75mm, and yet at the same time had superior mobility and better armor by 30mm. So rather tragically, the VK3001H has been relegated to the one role that heavy tanks should not be occupying, which is a long-range sniper. It's that combination of 50mm of armor, truly pathetic for a heavy, and the complete lack of mobility, which means that it cannot brawl effectively. The beautifully accurate conish gun that it packs is brilliantly accurate, but doesn't have the upfront damage to be a real proper heavy tank brawling weapon. The VK simply takes too long to get to the front lines, and if it occupies any time there, it's going to die. So what we're effectively left with is a slow Stug that cannot hide. So how does it play? What do we do with it? Well, you're pretty much looking at it. The only way that the VK's armor is going to have any effect is by sitting at extreme range to force the enemy's penetration to drop off dramatically. The only way you're going to get into a situation where your weaponry trades off more effectively against the enemy is by sitting at extreme range where your accuracy helps you and their lack thereof hurts them. And your absolutely tragic mobility means that if you want to have any serious impact on the game, you have to pick one particular part of the map where you are certain of having a lot of targets to fire at which point you pitch a tent, roast some marshmallows, and camp for the duration of the game. So if you've been paying attention, the wrong thing to do in a heavy tank is the right thing to do in the VK3001H. And it is precisely for this reason that the KV-1 is still in my garage, and this tragic thing is long gone. It's not a bad tank, don't get me wrong, it is not a bad tank. I mean, the Stug is amazing, and this is basically just a bargain basement hand-me-down Stug. But the problem is that Matchmaker is going to treat this like a heavy tank, and it does not operate like a heavy. Your team is going to be a heavy down, while this thing sits at the back, acting as a second-line sniper. And if things start to go pear-shaped because of your team's lack of real heavies, you're going to run into another problem of this vehicle's confused design. When a swarm of enemy vehicles descends on your position after dealing with the minuscule roadblock provided by the actual heavies on your team, you'll get a lot of shots off and inflict a decent amount of damage as they cross open ground. But you're going to quickly find that there is a hard limit to the amount of damage you can actually do, in the form of the ammo capacity of this vehicle being only 45 shells. It's that same 135 damage common of many of the low-tier 75mm guns. So the combination of chancing a lot of long-range shots where the accurate gun can still go a little awry, in combination with the low ammo capacity that this thing shares in common with the Stug that I've been comparing it to so far, does rather mean that the ammo capacity on this thing is a little bit of a weak point. Ideally, these low caliber, low damage, high rate of fire, high DPM guns come paired with high ammo capacities, but that's just not the case in this vehicle. And that can leave you in the lurch at the worst possible time. The very worst thing is in closing a battle. If this tank runs out of ammunition, you can't even ram the enemy to death. You can't even get up the speed to do that by throwing yourself off a cliff. Your only option at that point is, well, I guess to just sit in the corner and cry so pathetically that the enemy gives up in disgust and walks away, because the situation is just so awkward. You have just witnessed one of the rarest sights in the game. A VK30.01H bouncing shots. At extreme range, from an extreme angle, after firing through the layer of track links, a Ram 2 will struggle to penetrate 50mm of armor. Well done, German engineering. Ah, crap, they shot my engine. I take that back. Well, I've been bitching about how boring this tank is for about 5 minutes, so that complaint must itself be getting pretty boring by now, so I should probably start discussing the game. It's a Sand River defense, and as noted, my plan was to find a nice little camping spot and set up there. I had the able assistance of my mascot Doc in his Crusader, back when he started his journey down the British medium line. I wanted somewhere with a commanding view where I wouldn't have to move in order to engage multiple opponents, and lo and behold, down the two lines of advance from F0 and G8, I could be pretty sure of having a lot of targets, with Doc spotting initial targets on their approach to the causeways, and as it's only a tier 7 game, I could be pretty confident of keeping just out of view range until the enemy makes a proper push into the little plateau there. And if this distance and spotting defense didn't work out, I was hoping, or rather relying on the fact that I'd be the least important target for the enemy's attention. The beauty of being a small crappy tank with a low alpha gun is the enemy does not have a priority hard on to kill you, so you'll often be free to empty a hell of a lot of shots into them with complete impunity before they even register that you may be a threat to them, by which time hopefully the death of 1,000 cuts has done its work on them. And that's pretty much exactly how this has played out. I've begun by popping off shots at low tier mediums that can't spot me, shredding them quickly to keep the enemy's head down, then using the accuracy of the Konish to chance shots at the slim targets offered by the mid-tier mediums and odd heavies that have poked their heads over the ridgeline. It's only really now, when the enemy has breached a hole in the centre of the map, that they've lit me up and decided to start dealing with me, pretty much because I'm the closest target to a number of them. And so I haven't really been under any pressure until this point, and have had free rein to keep the enemy's head down. The damage that this gun does isn't major, but it will at least force them back or make them think twice before pushing around to engage the juicier targets that they know they're going to have to take longer to kill. If the west flank hadn't really fallen the way it has, it's questionable whether or not the enemy would have actually had the nerve to push through, as they've just now done. But push through they have, and they've come to the realization that I am soft, juicy, and well worth killing. We're heavily outnumbered and a number of the enemy tanks are on full health still, so really the only hope is that in this bold attack they're making themselves vulnerable enough that we can pick them off and at least hold them at bay for the final 2 minutes of the fight. And as you see, this desperate assault has cost them. Sure, we've lost tanks too, but they need the numbers to eliminate us quickly. There's only 2 minutes left on the clock, and it's unlikely they're going to get to cap out. The Wolverine is almost dead, the T-29s are too slow to get to the cap circle in time, and it's been a while since anyone saw that 12T. The enemy team's last desperate gambit to win this game cost them entirely too much, and now they just don't have the force to seal the deal. Which is pretty damn good news for me, because I'm down to my last 5 shells. I did say, that low ammo capacity will bite you in the ass. But it served me well. Even with all the chancy shots that you saw me taking, all the misses, all the premium shells that I've ploughed into sand, I've managed to build up 1700 damage, which is pretty impressive. I really wouldn't want to throw this game now in the closing minute. So whether we kill the enemy or just hide like bitches, it pretty much comes down to how much health the remaining vehicles are on. That T-29 there is a one-shot for hours, I'm guessing. For some reason I displayed health as a percentage back then. So not useful. That is not a useful number. I would advise changing it. As a metric, remaining HP will tell you what you need a lot better than this will. But anyway, I give the team the coward's pep talk of stay alive, don't engage. It's a mighty nice victory you got there. It would be a real shame if something were to happen to it. And now the second T-29 has popped up, and as you can see, he's on full health. The good news is, he's been camping all game, so he hasn't really impacted the game at all. But the bad news is, that's a lot of hit points. We're going to struggle to finish it off. So I decide to just empty the last 5 APCR rounds in this thing to keep that guy permatracked firing a bit too quickly to be effective, and it's a real expensive way of securing the game, but it's a win that I want to hold on to. So 12 seconds left, I've shot myself dry. All that's left to do is sit behind a rock and enjoy the win. Like I said, good tank, but boring. So yeah, I got a steel wall in a VK30.01H in a tier 7 game. Somehow. And there's an ace tanker badge there too, which is nice. And 5,624 experience. That's not how this normally works.